over to the European continent, where we have a Caribbean national who is a key figure in all of these discussions. So let me ask the producers to put up our panelists so that I can introduce them. We are going from the top grid in white. We have Dr. Andre Godon. He is the CEO of TSL Technical Services Limited, and he is out of Jamaica. We'll give you a little more information on him in a little bit. We have, to my left, lower grid in the blue shirt, Dr.Jerrol Thompson. He's the CEO of the St. Vincent and the Grenadines Medical Cannabis Authority. And we have, to our extreme right on the lower grid, Mr. Peter Wickham. He's the Director of the Caribbean Development Research Services, CADRES. We have Mr. Peter Wickham, who is no stranger to the GBN. We interview him on various issues, especially relating to politics and who he thinks might win the next elections, or why he thinks the polls went a particular way. Peter is Barbadian, I believe, but we are pleased to be able to break geographical boundaries and barriers. And he is, I tell him he's chilling out somewhere in France. Yeah, Peter, good night.
That's right. Good night. Good to be with you again on GBN. I feel very much at home.
Very good. So Dr. Andre Godon, he set up the Cannabis Licensing Authority in Jamaica and is involved in both advising the governments of St. Kitts and Nevis and St. Vincent and the Grenadines on their cannabis policy. And as we mentioned, Dr. Jerrol Thompson, he's the Chief Executive Officer of the St. Vincent and the Grenadines Medical Cannabis Authority. We did have Mr. Saboto Caesar out of St. Vincent talking about what's been happening there, and we expect to hear Dr. Thompson expound on that for us. Now, Peter's role, we've heard a lot about the CARICOM report. And then I found out it was Peter behind this report, right? Peter conducted a 2018 survey for inclusion into CARICOM's marijuana report. And according to the figures we have in front of us, it showed that 30% of Grenadians are for full legislation, while 31% favored partial decriminalization. 22% of those surveyed believe that cannabis should remain legal, should remain illegal, while 17% were unsure or could not decide whether they want to see it legal or decriminalized. Gentlemen, I'm happy to have you with us this evening.
My pleasure to be here with such a distinguished panel and on your program.
Good. Peter, let's talk in overarching terms about that CARICOM report. We have heard a lot, before we get into figures, we've heard a lot about this CARICOM report. Tell us about it.
Yeah, well, the initiative was initially one of Dr. Gonzalez, and he thought it was useful to have a commission together to look at the pros and cons of legalization and to essentially chart a way forward. It's similar to what was done in Jamaica. I think it was the Chavannes report many years ago that did the same thing. This one was region-wide. My role really was I offered to assist through one of the commissioners that was based in Barbados, Alana Griffith, Dr. Griffith. I offered to assist in providing data regarding public opinion, because I believe it's useful whenever you're making decisions like that to know how the public feels. So we submitted reports in, I believe it was about 6 or 7 of the territories where the commission did their work, so that we were able to get the views of the persons in the population in those places. So that was the role. The commission essentially came up with what I thought was a relatively bold report, suggesting that ganja ought to be treated no differently than any other controlled narcotic, like alcohol, for example, where you look at monitoring use and facilitating use, but you do it in a slightly more structured manner. But ultimately, the idea of the stigma and the negative criminalization of persons who use marijuana for different reasons should be discouraged. And that's basically where they came from. But as I said, my role was more to support their work regarding the provision of poll data from individual Caribbean countries, and I was happy to do that. So later, perhaps we can talk about the extent to which the data from Grenada is similar to what happened across the region.
Definitely. You mentioned St. Vincent, and so we will go to Dr. Jerrol Thompson. Dr. Thompson, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and if we put this in raw terms, your Prime Minister has often been heard to say that he competes with Jamaica in terms of grade and who's got the best quality, right? So we heard Peter saying that the Honorable Dr. Ralph Gonzalez is somebody who spurred this CARICOM report. What is St. Vincent's thinking and leaning on this matter for people who are hearing about SVG's role for the first time?
Well, and I'm not sure, I think we do have a little bit of a delay, but St. Vincent comes from a background where we've had, over the last 50, 60 years, a fair amount of traditional cultivators, as we call them. These are persons who have been cultivating or had been cultivating cannabis on an illegal basis. And I think because of the nature of our topography, there was large swaths of the area that was largely inaccessible, and this facilitated them doing this. And of course, law enforcement tried their very best to see how they could curtail this. At one point in time in the 90s, we even had the United States having troops and various other individuals come in as part of their whole eradication program. But I think that the thinking changed. And I could tell you that this where I'm part of I'm a medical doctor. I'm an infectious disease specialist. And I remember in the 90s, I had a considerable amount of what I consider as being HIV patients. And we observed that they essentially were losing weight, and they found that cannabis was something to help them maintain their weight. And I was quite shocked in 1995 when, attending a lecture, there was a report that showed that we actually had a new system that they discovered in our bodies. And we probably will talk about this, the endocannabinoid system, one in which many people never heard of before, but a distinct system that helps to control our mood, our appetite, our sleep, our pain level, and so forth. And we started getting very interested in this, and other countries started getting interested in this. But over a period of time, it was soon realized that this whole effort to try and incarcerate young people and so just really was not working. And I think that's where the Prime Minister, Dr. Gonzalez, came in from a heads of government point of view and said, look, let's all collectively look at this. And that's where the commission was formed. The commission had its report. In St. Vincent, I would say we would have gone through lots of consultations before the final report and after the final report. And it would seem as a result of that, I having been, I would say, an ex-politician myself, having represented areas of the country where this was cultivated, I was asked to then lead the Medicinal Cannabis Authority in terms of its movement forward. So that's more or less where we had reached at that point. A lot has happened since, and maybe we'll be able to talk about that aspect in due course.
All right, definitely. Let's go to Dr. Godon. And Dr. Godon is in Jamaica, as we said. He set up the Cannabis Licensing Authority and is involved in advising both the government of St. Kitts and Nevis and St. Vincent and the Grenadines on their cannabis policy. Now, Dr. Thompson mentioned the correlation between what was happening in St. Vincent on the ground and the CARICOM report. Dr. Godon, what is Jamaica's stance on this whole thing within the CARICOM frame?
You know, it's quite interesting to see where we have arrived at in the Caribbean. Jamaica passed the law to decriminalize cannabis in 2015. Many people do not remember that when Jamaica did that, we were probably the third country after Uruguay and one other in the world to have gone that route. Canada had not yet moved. Much of the rest of the Caribbean, nobody else in the Caribbean had yet moved. But the government of the day thought it, as Dr. Thompson has said, thought it iniquitous to continue a situation of criminalizing large swathes of the country, large numbers of young people and Rastafarians and a whole set of other people, and that traditionally grow or use cannabis, whatever your views were of it. And so there was a decriminalization in March 2015, and by July, I was asked and had set up the Cannabis Licensing Authority. And by February 2016, we had our regulations ready. Some of these were promulgated towards the end of in 2016, government had changed. So the CARICOM report actually came after Jamaica had already embarked on this journey. But it was quite instructive that many of the conclusions and findings and recommendations of the CARICOM report supported the Chevan's report, which was discussed previously, which had been done in the 90s here, and many of the studies and discussions that had taken place and wide consultations in Jamaica. And having the perspective, not just from Jamaica, but also having the great, great pleasure of working with Dr. Thompson and the excellent team in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, who are doing path-breaking work with the cannabis industry there, and also having been able to guide the St. Kitts and Nevis government in their decision-making. It is quite heartening to see that the Caribbean is beginning to step back and look in a rational way at some of the natural herbal bounties with which we are bestowed, and look at ways of making sure that our people are able, in a measured way, to access medicinal cannabis.
I want to go to Peter in a little bit, but let me just ask you, Dr. Godon, what do you think is the role of politics in all of this discussion that we're having these days on decriminalizing marijuana?
Well, you know, Jerrol, being an ex-politician, it would be interesting to hear his perspective. The truth of the matter, from my perspective, is that unfortunately, politics sometimes gets in the way of rational discussions and rational decision-making as regards the role of cannabis in our traditional societies, and the traditional role of cannabis in Caribbean society. There are few people who can reasonably deny that in most Caribbean countries, there are significant numbers of persons that in one form or other, whether drink as a tea or consume otherwise, use cannabis. And unfortunately, the position that you take politically often ends up hamstringing a government in dealing with this issue, even if it appears that many of the people in the country may have changed their position. And so unfortunately, politics sometimes does not allow us to make rational decisions. And personally, I would like to see the decisions made based on science, based on fact, based on religious freedoms and others that redound to the wider benefits of society, with the protections in place for the vulnerable children and other persons that can have negative consequences from using the drug.
All right, so let me hop back to Dr. Thompson in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And Dr. Thompson, I want you to, don't forget to sit back and relax a little bit. I don't know if the light is coming into your eyes, so you're moving toward the frame. But you mentioned that you represented people in constituencies in St. Vincent and the Grenadines where cannabis has been widely grown. I would like us to put the medicinal part of it out, and the reason I'm asking what is the role of politics, in Grenada, we had the National Democratic Congress announcing 1.5 weeks ago that they would adopt the CARICOM report, and they are pushing for the decriminalization of marijuana. And people are saying it's because of a cabinet reshuffle, and it has been suspected that the person who is now heading agriculture when the reshuffle takes effect might have been the lead on this. And so they were playing political games. What is the role of politics in this policy move that we see toward decriminalizing marijuana? And I want you to be very frank and honest with me as a politician.
Well, you certainly don't want to mingle and intertwine in what would be Grenadian politics. But I would say that, first of all, we've been quite lucky to have, first of all, Dr. Ralph Gonsalves as the Prime Minister, who saw that this was necessary. And at the same time, who you mentioned earlier, Honorable Saboto Sees, the Minister of Agriculture, who basically, I think, had the leadership skills to kind of see this through. Very often, policy measures can take a very long time, or they can take the weight of leadership to steer those particular issues. But at the same time, there had to be public consultation. I think that's what we really did best. We talked to the Christian community. We talked to the medical community. We talked to the Rastafari. We talked to the youths, and basically talked to the public in general. And we think we had maybe over about 35 town hall meetings and community consultations, radio programs, and so forth, just like this. And I think this is important. If it is sometimes seen just as politics, there would be opposition to some of these things. But I think that there are some other very important goals. And in a region where the economies and so forth are going through some element of strain coming out of globalization and, of course, now COVID, there has to be new models, new ways. And I think it's felt that as other countries have been liberalizing, therefore there would be that day, that possibility that product could have been imported into Jamaica and into St. Vincent and the Grenadines and other parts of the Caribbean. And that was one of the things, a hallmark of the CARICOM report, that if this were to be done, we needed to do so quite early and to be quite deliberate about it so that we could be ahead of the game. So that if there was an industry, whether that industry is one just of medicinal for local use, or whether it is one that is medicinal for export, or on the fringes in terms of how that is taken with respect to the tourism industry and so forth, that at least we could have a stake in the game, and that there could be the economic benefits, not just at a national level, but for those traditional cultivators, the Rastafari, all the individuals who have been suffering and crying in the wilderness, that there was some benefit associated with this product. And now the science has caught up with it. It is not a situation that we could leave these persons behind. Okay, and so that was a very important element that some person may say is politics, but I think it's part of the process of national development.
Let me ask you, and I want to, Peter, never mind, I'm coming to you in a little bit because I want to find out some details on the CARICOM report. But let me stick on the politics for a little bit, and I'm staying with the politician for a while to ask you whether in your constituency, for instance, whether it isn't the first nature thing to do to take a position that would be popular with your constituents so that you can get some votes?
I think that with the survey that was done in Civis, and I will stand corrected, it actually showed that there was about 60-something% of individuals who were in favor of some aspect of discriminalization, whilst there was a majority of us who did not want to see recreational, there were large swaths of individuals who wanted to see decriminalization, an element of fairness. And the point, it was the right thing to do. The time had come. The science had caught up. And the Rastafari, in essence, were right. And there were benefits, and I think that that sort of credit really had to be given. And whether one wants to call it politics or not, I think it was the right policies to put in place and we carried out and conducted. It's my hope that throughout the Caribbean, this is something that really can also be put in place.
Right, and just before I let you off the hook, what do you say to people who, for instance, are thinking and are saying that Grenadians are to be sold like Judas sold Christ for 30 pieces of silver because politicians would like to get votes by jumping on the bandwagon and saying we should decriminalize that? What do you say to people who are saying that people are, it's like the 30 pieces of silver?
I think that there was a CARICOM report that was presented to the heads of government. I think generally there was consensus that this was accepted. It may be for one country, Jamaica, St. Vincent, to move a lot faster than others, but right now, Antigua would have liberalized. Dominica is presented in the parliament. St. Lucia is going. St. Kitts has already gone.
Dr. Thompson, Dr. Thompson.
So basically, I want to make the point that Trinidad has decriminalized to some degree. And I think that the process is on the way in terms of the nature and the pace at which I would not say these things are necessarily 30 pieces of silver, but I know the politics is always thrown in and so forth. But I suppose Peter would tell you that the statistics really show that the thinking has been changing compared to the early part of the century, to the 80s and the 90s, and it's going to be important also to understand why the thinking has changed.
Right. So you mentioned Peter and the report, and Peter, thanks for your patience. I've been meaning to get to you to ask you about the research that you did and what are some of the findings, without going into too much details at this time, because we want to be certain that we can have it in bite-sized pieces. We'll take a break after you give us the first tranche, and then we come back. So generally, what were the findings throughout the CARICOM region?
But I mean, before we go there, though, I just want to get a chance to talk about the politics of it.
Definitely.
Because I often get the sense that, and I mean, of course, my work is grounded in politics, and most of the questions in most of these surveys were attached to political surveys anyhow, because that's how we got the data for free, ultimately, for the benefit of the CARICOM Commission. So, yeah, I mean, I think in most instances, politicians are concerned that they pursue policy that is popular, but also that they do not offend people in the process. And I think that a big part of the hesitance across the Caribbean community with politicians is that they're afraid to offend sections of the community. So you want to know that your policy is something that people will support. The idea of 30 pieces of silver is a popular argument, but I also say that there's a counter to this. For me, ganja in the Caribbean has become a social problem in the sense that the smoking of it is not necessarily a social problem, but there's violence associated with it, much like in prohibition, where you found that the problem wasn't really that people were drinking alcohol. The problem was that the consumption of alcohol was associated with guns and drugs. And other bad, negative things. And we had a couple of studies that were done in Barbados, and one of them was that there was this direct link to violence. And it wasn't violence about using ganja and becoming violent. It was violence in terms of the procurement process was normally one that caused fights and created an issue of violence. So that was a social problem. And then you have a usage pattern. And I mean, again, in Barbados, we did a survey for the government that was specifically related to ganja. And we found that more than a third of Barbadians use ganja recreationally. You're criminalizing a third of your population regarding something that they do habitually. And then we're all societies that sell rum. I mean, Grenada is a rum-producing country as well, and it is a drug. And my thing is that it is a social thing associated with the drug of alcohol versus the drug of ganja. And the feeling was that people who smoke ganja were being criminalized and treated unfairly. So I think that's the political background. And the interesting thing about these surveys was that, especially in the case of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, where we did it several times, was that no correlation between party support and support for the decriminalization of marijuana, which means that whether a person was NDP or the person was ULP, it didn't matter that their views on the decriminalization were consistent across the board. And I think that that's important to me, that it is not a political issue. In the case of Grenada, it's the same thing, that it's not really a political issue, one party or the other. And it's good that we can say that there are actually some things that cut across political lines in that way. The matter of support regionally, we have found a couple of things happening. One is that the support for decriminalization, whether it be full or partial, has consistently increased. The most recent one that we did was in St. Kitts and Nevis, where the people who felt that it should remain illegal had dropped as low as 11%. And the interesting thing was when we started to do these surveys, in Barbados, 2003 was the first one, the level of demand for the illegality of marijuana was at 64%. So over time, there's been a gradual decline. When we did Grenada's in 2018, theirs was at 22%, which means that everyone else is saying, let's have some conversation about a way in which we could deal with it. So there has been a consistent progress to the point now where when we did the last one, support for the illegality was actually at 11%, which I think is a significant finding. And it means that everyone is, on board with this whole idea of let's treat into it differently. What worries me, though, and I think it's unfortunate, is that we waited this long. Siobhan's report was back in, I believe it was 99, 2000, around there,
yes,
98. Late 99. Yeah, and the Siobhan's report was suggesting that we go this direction many years ago, and unfortunately, across the region, there was a hesitance to move in this direction. And in the meantime, we were criminalizing, large sections of the population in the process. So I'm happy that the conversation has started. There's a social factor. There's an economic factor now that we're exploring. Where the economics is concerned, I have some reservations about the extent to which the plenty that has been seen in places like the United States of America, where ganja farmers have made millions and millions of dollars, the extent to which we can benefit from that in the Caribbean. Because honestly, I think that the horse is bolted, and those guys have taken up, one could argue, the prime real estate as far as ganja is concerned. And I think that we are basically now getting to a stage where we can exploit the crumbs. One last point, interesting phenomena in St. Vincent and the Grenadines was that I think that there's an appreciation, certainly among some of the ganja farmers, that there is a benefit to it remaining illegal. And it was interesting that St. Vincent was the first place that I found that kind of a dynamic where people in some of the ganja producing regions that we surveyed were opposed to decriminalization because they felt that when you do that, it becomes an agricultural crop and they're not going to be able to make a decent living and send to school the children and things like that. I was fascinated by that because I always assumed that ganja growers were anxious to have the classification changed. But the feeling in many instances is that when you do that, we have a situation where then it becomes popular among persons in industry and business, and you get big business coming in, exploiting the medical side of it, and then the ganja farmers, the Rastafarians, that Doc was talking about, are not able to make some money and benefit from the fact that they've been doing this thing and being harassed for so many years, but now they're able to produce and they can't get their own piece of the pie. So those are some of the issues that Grenada will have to consider.
All right. Well put there. We will take a commercial break in a minute. Just to start providing some feedback, because we'll be opening the phone lines early this evening. Mm-hmm. We have a comment on the YouTube channel from Frank Robinson, who is saying policy is strategy of the people and of the government to bring about a strategy to create a referendum. And the most important issue is a commitment to create a product that is not adulterated. There must be good manufacturing processes in place. We have quite a few comments coming in on our social media feeds. We'll be sharing those and we'll be opening the phone lines. This is Beyond the Headlines. We are exploring the hidden issues on the whole issue of decriminalizing cannabis. We'll be right back after the break. Please stay with us.
herbs and herbal supplements? Or are you thinking about having a complete body cleanse to jumpstart your health? Then no need to look further. Visit Nirvana Natural Health Clinic, Detox Center, and Natural Health Store. We carry a wide range of herbal products for kidney and gallstone cleansing, male sexual enhancement formulas, asthma and sinusitis, gas and bloating, acid reflux, constipation, arthritis, imbalanced hormones, female health issues, liver cleansing, weight loss, and so much more. Also available, colonic irrigation, holistic health consultations, essential oils, and diffusers. Look out for our online natural health store coming soon. Call 231-6642 418-7115 or 449-7753 to find out about our delivery options or to book an appointment. Visit us at Belmont St. George's, close to the Foliage, Monday to Saturday, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Nirvana Natural Health Clinic. Detox your way to health.
Or more in Ultratech fuel, or purchase a Rubigas refill at any Rubis service station and get an entry card. Win one of 5 amazing grand prizes worth $2,500, including Ultratech fuel, cash, groceries, bill payment vouchers, and home furnishings. Each grand prize winner gets to donate $500 to charity too. Plus, win exciting weekly prizes, including electronics. Make sure you're in with a chance to win. Win with Rubis. You deserve it.
How going on, boy?
Hey, good old things.
Hey, Daisy.
Yeah.
Boy, in line, boy. Your house looking a real good day.
Boy, it's thanks to the hard-working and professional staff at the Housing Authority of Grenada. They handled me real nice. They did my plan, they did the construction, and I didn't even have to worry about a thing. They were there with me every step of the way, supervising the job, asking me about my concerns, giving me feedback as the house took shape. They were there from start to finish, and even put the keys in the palm of my hand. I give them an A++ for customer service.
Oh, it's people from housing bad, boy.
Boy, not bad. Excellent. If you're thinking about constructing your home, why not consult the Housing Authority of Grenada? You could visit them right down in the Sandino complex, or give them a call, 440-1015 or 440-1016, or check out their website, hag473.com. They go handle you. They go jog your blocks, they go draw your plan, they go tote your materials. Hey man, where you going? The Housing Authority of Grenada is your choice for affordable housing and a stress-free construction experience.
I'm reaching my dreams with GOT. They're the ones for me. I'm reaching my dreams with GOT. They're the ones for me. Since 1983, they've been serving the country, and we like all their financing, giving the people what they want, what they need, what they love. Come and join the family that's here for you all the way. From birth to graduation, your first job to your home, and your card through your golden years.
The GT Credit Union has been actively supporting nation building through its many sponsorships and the programs including Financial Literacy Quiz, Pass the Torch Calypso Program, Junior Cooperatives in Secondary Schools, CPEA, and the Thompson-CEO grants. The credit union has helped many people make their dreams come true. Let them help you with yours. You don't have to be a teacher to be a member. So what are you waiting for?
GUT Credit Union, it's where you belong.
Life can be unpredictable, and uncertainties can throw everything out of sync. In spite of life's uncertainties, Grenlec remains committed to providing you with consistent, reliable service. Persistent, outstanding balances disrupt your peace of mind and limit Grenlec's ability to provide the service you depend on. That's why Grenlec is urging all customers to bring your account up to date at this time. Please ensure that you pay your bill in full and continue to pay on time to avoid arrears and the inconvenience of disconnection. Call 237 for 24-hour bill inquiries or contact our customer care team urgently at telephone number 237. Grenlec, energizing our Grenada.
Welcome back to Beyond the Headlines. This evening, we are exploring the cannabis industry, looking into some of the deeper issues going past some of the on-the-surface debate that has been had on this subject thus far. And this evening, our panelists, just in case you join us late, Dr. Andre Godon, he's the CEO of TSL Technical Services based in Jamaica. Dr. Jerrol Thompson, he is the CEO of St. Vincent and the Grenadines Medical Cannabis Authority, and Dr. Peter Wickham. Mr. Peter Wickham, I'm assigning the doctorate in faith, Peter. He's the director of the Caribbean Development Research Services, CADRES, which has been conducting the surveys in the region. We've heard a lot about the CARICOM report. It's Peter, that's the face behind the report that we've heard so much about. Before we went to break, Peter was looking at some of the ins and outs of the survey and some of the issues that have been raised. Let's go now to Dr. Godon. Dr. Godon, after almost 5 years of the decriminalization of weed, and some people are telling me, Campbell, stop using this big word, cannabis, weed, that's what we call it in Jamaica. And I think that was done in 2015. How will you say the industry has contributed to the development of Jamaica's economy?
If I am frank, and I will be, not nearly as much as it could have or should have. Having, in hindsight, had the benefit of seeing what we did in the first, I would say, 18 months or so, and what happened subsequently, I believe that we in Jamaica have been a little timid with how we've approached it. I believe St. Vincent has benefited significantly from looking at some of the things we've done and taken a different approach. And so 5 years on, Jamaica, St. Vincent, and the rest of the Caribbean actually faced quite a significant threat if, in fact, in December, as some expect, the UN follows the WHO's recommendation and reschedules cannabis, taking it from where it currently is regarded as a drug with no benefit and significant risk of abuse and so on, and scheduling it as it should be, just like any other controlled narcotic, which will mean that all the other countries that are not normally primary producers, but which have become major suppliers, for example, of cannabidiol, which we in Jamaica import to treat multiple things, which falls in a category which is not regarded as a narcotic, but which is being used to treat many of the things that ganja, ganja is what we call it, and I think most people know it as that, rather than cannabis. We are importing product to treat things that we traditionally treat with our naturally grown product, and which I think Peter was saying, for which we criminalize many people. So I don't think we've made as much progress as we should have. We have significant investments have been made by local, mainly a lot of it by locals, but also by international companies, some of which have pulled out as the bubble has burst in Canada and the US in terms of all the multiples that a lot of these companies had entered the stock markets with, that were really not backed by fact, but still the investments are there on the ground. And I think St. Vincent has been very smart with how they've approached it. Once the investments are there on the ground, you can't take them up and leave. So the question is, how do you position your industry? What do you want to achieve? And if it is that you're looking only at exports and not looking at how the plant has played a role in your culture and is a part of your national ethos, then maybe it is that you're looking to compete with a commodity with others who have the ability to produce it on much larger scales and sell it as a commodity. I don't personally believe that it's in the Caribbean interest, any Caribbean country, to look at ganja, cannabis, as a commodity, but look to special niches for their product, whether sold domestically or used for treatment or used as part of a cultural experience rather than just producing a commodity for export or sale.
Okay.
So in Jamaica, I don't believe that and I'm being blunt, I don't believe that we've necessarily gotten it right. I don't believe that our policies have been cohesive enough, have been focused enough, and have benefited as many people as it should have.
So if we go to St. Vincent and we could ask Dr. Thompson. Dr. Thompson, can you clarify for people who are still wondering whether weed is decriminalized or fully legalized in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and also if you could explain the restrictions on its use or possession? What's the real status in St. Vincent?
Now, I think Peter was bringing up, and so Dr. Godon, several elephants in the room. Are you able to hear me? Yes. Now, one of those is the UN, the United Nations International Narcotic Control Board.
Dr. Thompson, can I interrupt for a little bit? It seems that there is some latency on your feed, so we may need to reset. So let me just go to Peter for a little bit while we see if the latency will, we could get rid of that latency on your feed, because we are hearing you, but there's latency there. Peter, when you look at the study that has been completed, so based on your research in the Caribbean, considering the struggling tourism industry, would you say there's a greater interest probably in pursuing growth of a marijuana industry in Grenada and other Caribbean countries post-COVID-19?
Yeah, I mean, but that's a completely different direction in terms of, as Dr. Godon was saying, where do we want to go with this project? And I think that there is a belief in some quarters that the ganja industry can replace the tourism industry in some regards. I tend to think that that's not going to happen. I think that the Jamaica experience has taught us a lot about what we can and cannot likely achieve in that regard. There is a demand for recreational marijuana among tourists, and there's also a demand for recreational marijuana among locals. The question is, supplying that demand, will that generate significant economic activity? And I tend to think that it probably won't. The challenge with agriculture in the Caribbean is that it suffers from several problems associated with the agriculture industry. Ganja has not suffered from those problems because of the very high value associated with it. The challenge comes when you decriminalize and you create a situation, and Antigua has taken an interesting route where they have allowed persons to own plants. When you take that approach, ultimately you create a situation where you take the profit out of it. If everyone who smokes marijuana could own a plant, or own a couple of plants, the need to buy the product is reduced. And I think that was an interesting way that Antigua approached it by saying, let's just create one could say a cottage industry where everyone who wants will smoke. The product is not that highly refined in the sense that you don't have to do anything to it to be able to get it to smoke. And that's one of the challenges. So the moment it becomes like dasheen and any other agricultural product like nutmeg or what, it suffers from the same problems. And I think that's probably the conversation that we need to begin having now, the extent to which this idea of use for recreation, whether it can generate serious economic activity. I don't think it will replace the tourism industry. I certainly think it can supplement the tourism industry. There's an active industry in Holland for years where persons go there to smoke ganja in peace. And I do believe that there can be that type of industry in the Caribbean where people may move from island to island to sample the difference between the hydro that's available in Jamaica versus St. Vincent. Maybe Grenada may develop one at some stage. That type of thing can work. But again, I don't know that the big dollars associated with it is what is going to happen. But nonetheless, the direction that we're having now, where we're looking at, as Dr. Godon said, we have the Jamaica experience, and then Dr. Thompson is telling us about the St. Vincent experience. we have more experiences that we can look at in terms of where we're going with the whole thing. I should also point out that in the recent initiative, Prime Minister Motley in Barbados has essentially introduced a ticketing system. So she is proposing a referendum on the full liberalization, but she's introducing a ticketing system that where persons who are caught with the drug can pay a ticket and pay a fine, and carry on smartly as the case may be, which is an interesting way station on the road to full liberalization.
That looks as illegal. That would be looking at the legal framework, and I guess those are some of the ramifications that the islands will have to look into. Dr. Godon, so one of the questions being asked is there an increase in the number of young people smoking weed in Jamaica since its decriminalization? And while I just ask you to hold 5 seconds so that I could ask, if I could ask Dr. Thompson, if you can, let me ask Dr. Thompson, please, to reset the feed. So you may have to disconnect, and we'll readmit you to see if, because that latency is still there, and we really want to ask you some key questions here. So let me ask Dr. Thompson if he can exit the stream and dial back in so that we can deal with that issue which is persisting. Sorry about that. The latency is on his end, unfortunately, because everything here seems to be sound. So let's go back to Dr. Godon. Young people, since you decriminalized the drug, have you seen an increase in young people using marijuana?
That was a significant fear in Jamaica, that we would see a significant increase in young people using the drug. But in Jamaica, I know, and Jerrol can tell you, that was also a concern in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and certainly it was in St. Kitts, and I'm pretty sure in most Caribbean countries it would be. I think what the evidence is that while initially there may have been some sort of romance that some young people may have had, over the span of time, there has not been significant increase in the use of cannabis or of ganja amongst the young. There has not been. It, as you know, it has generally been available on the street corners. It's now available in the herb houses that have been set up for sale, but there has not been the expected or the often feared significant increase in psychosis and in persons using marijuana that would lead to a lot of the antisocial behaviors, and we have not seen that. And I don't think that has necessarily been seen in any of the territories in which there has been an increase. So there has been decriminalization, I'm sorry.
So for countries like Grenada, who are now still mulling this idea, based on your experiences in Jamaica, is any pitfall you'd want to tell them that they should guard against?
Yes, absolutely. It is very important that the discussion bear in mind the concerns of the people from that have, may have objections for religious purposes, in the same way as we consider those persons that use a drug as part of their as part of their sacrament. It's very important to have that balance in the discussion. It's also important to bear in mind that there are some negative consequences for consumption of ganja, of cannabis, particularly for the young brain, the young adolescent brain. There have been quite a few studies that have shown that there can be negative consequences. And so because of this in Jamaica, at the Cannabis Licensing Authority, we were very clear, and our messaging was very clear, that at no time should it be taken that the decriminalization is carte blanche for young people and people below the age of, I think the age is 25 to 28. That's, I think, where the studies have shown that you tend to have negative consequences. And I know Jerrol would be able to give you more up to date, being a medical doctor, but it's very important that the communication be clear, be backed by science, and also be open about the benefits as well, not just the positives, but also the negatives, and that be cloaked in the data that speaks to the positive benefits of both medicinal and other forms of use of the drug.
Thank you so much for really digging deep into some of those issues, because like we've mentioned, some of these issues, been skirted over, but you're getting into some of the ramifications of this that people need to look beyond the headlines, as we do on this program, just to let you know indeed that this is beyond the headlines. We are exploring the cannabis industry, some of the hidden issues that have not been explored, and we're happy to be able to present our panelists out of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Jamaica, and also Mr. Peter Wickham. He is Barbadian, but he is living in France. We'll take a commercial break, and we'll be right back. And of course, we'll be entertaining your calls, and we'll also be sharing some of the feedback on our social media feeds. Do stay with us.
Do your dreams seem far, far away from coming true? The National Lotteries Authority's Lotto Jackpot is $280,000. Fulfilling your plans can be just one ticket away. So play today. Lotto, play and win a lot of money.
A pleasant evening to everyone. Welcome to the National Lotteries Authority's Lotto Draw number 3120 for today, Monday, September 28th, 2020. I am Anisha Charles. With me this evening is Ms. Makiba Bain from PKF Accountants and Business Advisors, whose purpose is to ensure that this show is conducted in a frank, accountable manner, and the game balls with industry standards and in a way tampered with. At this time, your tickets at hand because we're about to play for a jackpot of $280,000. But first, your free ticket letter. Good luck. This evening's free ticket letter is check your tickets in the meantime. Your free ticket letter for this evening is C as in cash. Let's proceed for 5 winning numbers. Good luck. First up for this evening is check your tickets. First number up is 26. Second number. Second number is 30. Third number up. Third number is 11, followed by 22, fifth and final number. Final number is 1. Let's recount those numbers. Check your tickets. First number up is 26. The second, 30. Third, 11. Followed by 22. Fifth and final is 1. So that's 26, 26, 30, 30, 11, 11. 22, 22, and 011. Your free ticket letter for this evening is C as in cash. Congratulations to all the winners of this evening's Lotto Draw. Lotto, play and win a lot. When you play all the games of the National Lotteries Authority, support sports, culture, and nation building. Thanks for joining us. Have a wonderful evening.
Tick, tock, toe, I win.
Feel like a big kid again when you play NLA's new scratch game, Tic-Tac-Toe. It's instant cash on the go. Reveal 3 X's or 3 O's in the same row, column, or diagonally, and win the prizes shown, or as much as $5,000. Win easy with Scratch. Must be 18 or older to play. Tic-Tac-Toe, please.
Give me a tic-tac-toe, please.
Tic-tac-toe, please.
Reading is too hard. Reading school books is lame. I'd rather read about children like me and cool things. I can read, but sometimes I don't even know why I have to. It makes no sense. Why can't we read about things we like?
Reading is the key to unlocking all learning and ensuring that children reach their potential. Here's what the children have to say.
Make reading fun. Teach me how to read, but let me practice reading with things I like to read. Talk with me and read with me at at least for a short time every day.
Let me tell you my own stories.
Read, learn, grow. The children are the future. Help them read, learn, grow. So parents, you play your part.
This message is brought to you by the OECS USAID Early Learners Program, funded by United States Agency for International Development.
Welcome back to Beyond the Headlines. This evening, we're speaking with Dr. Jerrol Thompson out of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Dr. Andre Godon out of Jamaica, and Mr. Peter Wickham. He is Barbadian living in France and headed up the CARICOM study regarding the proposed decriminalization of marijuana. Dr. Thompson is experiencing some technical challenges. He's rebooting his laptop, and hopefully we could get him back into the forum as soon as that process is complete. We know that the internet does give us some opportunities, but it also presents some niggling challenges, but we'll overcome that. Peter, let me come back to you. For those people in Grenada, we did have some stats where we saw that there were mixed reviews in Grenada. There was 30% one way, 31% one way, 21% another way. So for those people who are against decriminalization, could you tell us what were some of their points of view? Any supporting reasons provided?
Yeah. Okay. First thing, let me make it clear, because I think that there's some confusion. The CARICOM study was headed by Professor Antoine, Rosemary Antoine, who would have been the professor that handled it. My role was in terms of supporting the investigation into Caribbean countries and what public opinion was, but I wasn't part of the commission, and certainly it was headed by Professor Antoine. I wouldn't want to take that title away from her. We were not able to investigate the reasons why people said no in Grenada. And the point is that when we looked at the last study in Grenada, we're only looking at about 20% of people who said no, they wanted it to remain illegal. In Barbados, however, we had the opportunity to do that, because in Barbados, we did a ganja investigation that was more full. It was sponsored by the Crime Prevention Department, and they were able to ask people all kinds of questions. As Dr. Gordon said, the religious thing is one of them. We found that generally people who wanted the status quo to remain, a lot of them were older people. A lot of them were of a religious view, and the views were generally that if you decriminalize, you will have young people who will become ganja brains, and they would not focus on the studies, and they wouldn't do anything, they wouldn't contribute to society. A lot of myths surrounding the use of marijuana would have been responsible for people saying no. So the feeling that it was a drug that is inherently bad and addictive. There were people who felt it was a gateway drug that would lead to people using other stronger drugs. And those were some of the reasons that people would generally have said no. My sense is that in Grenada, the situation was no different. The religious thing is fascinating, for me, because it smacks of hypocrisy, where you found some people, because of their strong belief in Christian religion, that promotes the use of alcohol as a sacrament. We're opposed to the idea that Rastafarians should use ganja as part of their sacrament. And I think it's a situation where people are saying, my sacrament is better than yours, and mine is to be accepted and yours isn't. But there's a lot of negativity associated with the Rastafarian religion generally, and the belief that it promotes something that's illegal, which is what ganja was. And as a result, people have been uncomfortable with that, the hairstyles and that type of thing. The feeling is that that's all rolled up into it. So that was some of the negativity. But, as I said, the great thing is that the most recent study we did in St. Kitts,
Peter,
where they had almost half the number of people who said no.
If I can interrupt you here before you go to St. Kitts, Peter.
Which says to me that...
Peter, let me just interrupt you here, because we have a caller who has been very patient before you go to St. Kitts. And I think I want to get Bishop Clyde Harvey. I hope I can get him on the line. You're accusing Bishop Clyde Harvey and others of hypocrisy, but that's a whole different ballgame. Let's entertain this caller this time. Caller, good evening. Hello? Hello, are you there?
Good night.
Yes, please.
Hello?
Go right ahead.
Yeah, good night, and good night to all the gentlemen there.
Yes, please.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, let me first of all congratulate the gentlemen for educating us. But I am not, I don't know if they could help me to be more educated, but I'm not convinced that the freeing up of ganja is going to bring any much financial benefit to small islands like Grenada. One, because hearing that the gentleman said that the young people have to be there will have to be rules and regulation in young people smoking, and it have medical problem. You can have problems with your health and whatnot. It gives me an idea that we have to be still have to be restricted, heavily restricted. Right, so I'm not convinced that there's enough money is going to be made from that. And secondly, can you tell us if the persons or the growers will be able to ship on their own, or we have to have our own factories or in the industries to take care of the exporting of that?
Okay. Anybody want to take that one?
Yes, I'm happy to jump in because Jerrol isn't here with us. It's very important when this discussion is taking place that it be done, yes, in a regional context, and the CARICOM report and the work that Peter and his team did to provide some background to it is excellent. And it's good that it's there because it allows countries such as Grenada to have another point of reference other than just what the government thinks or what the opposition thinks or what the churches think or what the Rastafarians think. But what is really important is to have national discussion, which I think Dr. Thompson indicated. This was the same thing that we did in St. Kitts. It was also done in Jamaica, but I think more so in the other countries that came after. It's important to have open fora, and programs such as this are very important because these then help to advise what the national position is. What is it do we really want to achieve? And there are several important things. The decriminalization is critical in removing the stigma of criminality that now hangs over significant numbers of not just youth, people of the Rastafarian faith, and other persons that use cannabis or ganja. It would mean that stigma would be really removed. Also, those persons that have been criminalized, that have been charged, that can't travel. There are lots of people who can't get jobs because they have a conviction that's related to some small use. This is a significant economic benefit that hits at the family level. I remember a case in Barbados, Peter, I don't know if you're aware of it, where a migrant who had been living in Barbados, they had dual citizenship between a particular Caribbean country, and they also had been living in Barbados for like 20 years. But they were unable to get a US visa. And this was somebody with significant skills. They couldn't get a US visa because they had a prior conviction they were found with a spliff in a particular country. And so they were unable. Now, having reformed, having educated themselves, they could not access opportunities. And this is what happens to many, many, many persons throughout the Caribbean. So the gentleman is right about economic opportunities. But if each country looks at what is it that this particular product means to us, how is it a part of our culture? In Jamaica, I'll give you, for example, where a lot of the focus has been on export. When ganja is it is indistinguishably intertwined with Jamaican culture, with Rastafarianism, Bob Marley, all of the artists. I mean, it's a part of our culture. If we really want to benefit from it, then that culture has to be part of how the product is positioned, how it's marketed. This is not necessarily something that you package and export, although that's a possibility. It is something that you have people come to your country to experience as part of their cultural experience. But something that must be regulated, that must be safe, that they must know what they're getting, that it's not mixed with other things. So you require a whole industry around it that allow people in various communities that traditionally produce and grow or use a product to be able to create local industries. Now, whether they choose to package and export or extract and so on, that's a different thing. But where the economic benefit will be derived post-COVID, I have to say post-COVID because not too many people are traveling now, is where people are able to experience many of our traditional plants, not just cannabis, in the manner that we use them. This is where there is significant value add and there is significant benefit. This is where experiential tourism becomes a big thing because you can ship it overseas, but they can't experience it the same way as they do in your country.
All right. So let me just ask you to hold it there for a quick second because we have a caller on the line. Caller, good evening. Hello?
Hello?
Yes, please.
Good afternoon.
Good evening.
Well, my name is Alistair Hagley, better known as Jai Angel. I endorse the development of ganja in my country. I also endorse the decriminalization of ganja. Now I'm a man, I'm an artist, I'm a gardener, I'm also a runner. And ganja has made me stronger and stronger in my lifetime. I endorse ganja. I love ganja. It's part of my daily program. So I would like the government of Grenada to start decriminalizing marijuana or perhaps legalizing marijuana. Because I'm I would say, a light towards ganja. I love ganja. Ganja is me.
Thank
ganja
you so
made me
much.
a man. Ganja healed me from many afflictions.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We think, caller, we think we have gotten your point there. Peter, you wanted to say something about St. Kitts, or you want to respond to this?
No, I mean, in terms of, there's a misconception in the Caribbean that there is, people do not understand that there's a cost to the prosecution. Absolutely. There's a cost to the conviction, and there's also a cost to the pursuit of ganja crimes. And I think that this is something that people don't understand. Dr. Gordon's point about the guy in Barbados is very correct. We had a situation recently where the police picked up a UWI student who was in his first year. I found him with a spliff, was valued at probably 10 Barbados dollars, $5 US.
Right.
And he was arrested and dragged before the courts. And I think that when that happens, there are people in society that actually believe that the society benefits from that nonsense. But ultimately, what you've done is you've taken a young person, you have subjected that person to the emotional trauma associated with being arrested, being taken to the police station, being searched. He was held in prison overnight and then taken to the court in handcuffs the next morning. He didn't get a custodial sentence, but ultimately he had a conviction recorded against his name. And the society has to understand, and I think that this was the good thing with the Barbados study, that we were able to look at the cost financially and otherwise of really maintaining these laws. And I think that people feel that there's a benefit to be gained in terms of only selling. And I mean, it's not about that. Even if you can conserve the cost of sending police to go on raids to find small quantities, pursuing them in the courts, the court time that's wasted, the police time that's wasted, and then when you lock up someone, the cost to society of incarcerating that person, and then the social cost after, when that person has to try to be rehabilitated, it all adds up. And I think that if Grenada has started a conversation where it says we can eliminate some of those costs, I think it's better that you save that money and look towards dealing with housebreakers, look towards dealing with people who are involved in serious criminal activity, white-collar crime and other things. You know, that's where the efforts should be expended.
Peter, can I ask you, my father would say it's a genuine question. May his soul rest in peace, but the joke in the family is always about my father's genuine questions. Do you consume marijuana? Me
personally? No,
yes,
it's not my thing. I prefer but I don't judge. I think that we all have our poison, and the point has to be made that in Grenada, Jack Iron and Babash, I think those things can do considerably more damage
Rivers
than
and Clark's Code.
ganja.
Peter, Rivers and Clark's Code, right? We have
I'm sorry?
on the line. I was only pulling your leg there, Peter, but I just wanted to get my father's question in. We have a call on the line. Caller, good evening.
Yeah.
Hello? Anybody there? All right, so the person seemed to have gone. Any progress with Dr. Thompson?
Right there. I'm back here.
Dr. Thompson,
I am
you're
back.
Great to have you. Great to have you back, Dr. Thompson.
My apologies there.
That's all right. Technology does that. It tries to, keep the brain young.
This is not something that usually happens, but we know that it can.
It can happen. So, Dr. Thompson said, Vincent and the Grenadines, the focus there has been on building the export market and perhaps moving on to pharmaceuticals. Is marijuana being prescribed by regular pharmacies?
I want to say, I know I've missed quite a bit, but there are a number of things that we have been trying to do. And the answer to that is very soon that will be yes. We have trained close to about 98 physicians and pharmacists in what we've considered as being our patient access arm of this whole industry. This is the local patient access. And several doctors have been approved. The first dispensary license has been awarded. They should be opening very, very soon. Several others will be opening. And so that whole process is really on the way. So patients very soon will be able to fill their first prescription. We have a whole system by which that is permitted. But we also will allow, and I think it's one of the things that Peter had said, whether you choose tourism or you choose this industry, there is a link between the two because we have set up our legislation to allow persons from countries like Canada, the United States, anywhere Europe, that has already legalized to be able to fill prescriptions here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. We have a robust system. We've been quite lucky. We've linked with a company in Canada, the largest seed-to-sale company that allows for traceability and so forth. And they have set up a two-pronged process, one for our patient access and one for cultivation. So we're able to track all the prescriptions filled, how much, and so forth. And I think that very soon, to answer your question, that very soon, patients will be able to fulfill that whole promise of being able to fill a prescription. And visitors will also be able to do so too if they're from a jurisdiction or if they've seen a doctor online or here in St. Vincent to allows them to get that prescription. And they have the right conditions to do so.
Great. And we have another caller who wants to weigh in on tonight's discussion. Caller, it's your turn. Hello? A little bit of silent night. Peter, probably it's a holy night. All right, so if we can get reconnected with that caller, we would try to... The caller is there?
Yeah. Now...
Okay, so the caller, I'm told, is still there. Let's see if we could get them into the discussion. Caller, good evening. Are you hearing us?
I'm not hearing anything if you are hearing me.
Yes, we are hearing you. Go ahead. If you're seeing me on TV, the thumbs up.
No, I'm actually not looking at television at all. I'm actually just listening.
Go ahead. We're hearing you.
Question. The commission stated that we should decriminalize first, and if I'm not mistaken, lead towards legalization. Is there any reason why any country in the Caribbean would not choose to skip the step of decriminalization and go straight to legalization? And if they are, what would be those reasons?
Thank you so much. Important question. I don't know who on the panel would like to take this one.
I wonder if I could come in here since I made it. Now, we have to understand legalization. In St. Vincent, we've legalized from a medicinal point of view. Now, to legalize from a recreational point of view, full-fledged recreation, that's where that elephant is in the room. We have all signed treaties with the United Nations, and the INCB is the governor of that process. And to legalize recreationally will somewhat be in contraventional. So that's why there's only 2 countries, Canada and Uruguay, that has done so. Almost all the other countries have taken that first step of medicinal, and maybe later on they may go recreational. But this is a process that maybe what was mentioned by Dr. Godon in December, when the CND meets and United Nations meets on this subject, there may be significant changes, the reclassification of cannabis from class 1, from category 1, which is a drug that has no redeeming properties whatsoever, has no benefits. And we know that that's not true. And that's where it is right now. And I think that's where the change has to take place. So I'm expecting that you may see this. So in answer to that person's question, it may not be prudent right now to make that particular leap to full recreational, but in due course, it's something that I'm sure each country will want to explore. St. Vincent is taking a different approach. We're not just looking at persons being able to smoke. We really truly want to create an export-oriented industry that has the products and so forth that can make it into other markets, and we are trying to make sure that it has the quality type product that is able to do so. We feel we have a number of attributes, and so,
So Peter did mention the whole issue of the relationship between the drug trade and crime. So lawmen have profit. Some police officers will tell you that there is a link between the illicit drug trade and the crime. And do you think, have you witnessed a decrease in crime in St. Vincent and the Grenadines since the decriminalization of marijuana?
Absolutely, absolutely. And that has allowed the police to focus on other important things. Now, I want to tell you, and this is not often said, we've launched a major program to reach out to young persons because it is a fact that very young persons, 11, 12 years old, whose brains are not well developed, if they consume in very high levels of THC, cannabis, and low levels of CBD, that can induce psychosis if they have a family history of some sort of mental illness. And we have to be cognizant of that. And I bring that in because I know we're close to the end of the program. This is not often said. But the police, we've had significant discussions with them. It's important in Grenada that you have series of discussions with the police that they too are fully on board. So here in St. Vincent, we do have a process by which the Medicinal Cannabis Authority, the government, in partnering with the police, have a much better understanding of this industry. And I think there's been significant decrease in crime related to this in terms of cannabis. But that doesn't say you are going to then stop your efforts in relation to cocaine, stop your efforts in terms of some of the other drugs. Those things have been intensified, and we're going to continue to make sure that those serious drugs, I would call them, are not allowed to come in and take the place of any decriminalization with respect to cannabis.
Dr. Godon, I see you nodding passionately.
Yes, because it is very important. As we said, when Dr. Thompson had been a little bit on a bit of hiatus as he got his technology going, that you have those discussions, frank discussions, about the negative effects of cannabis, as well as the benefits of decriminalization. What's the difference between decriminalization and legalization? What are the treaties that our countries are party to that put certain strictures on the government and prevent them from going in a direction that they may want to go into? It's important that the people understand, so that if Grenada chooses to take a certain position, that people would understand why that decision was made. And that you wouldn't have people say, well, why didn't you legalize? Why didn't you go for recreational, or whatever the decision is? It is important to have constant dialogue and have people understand whether they support or not, but that they're able to speak in an informed manner, so that as the country grows, as there's more discussion, people are able to understand and are able to be a part of what is happening, wherever they fall in the spectrum of opinions.
And we have a wide swath of issues yet to be unveiled and discussed. But unfortunately, the clock is pointing at probably 2 minutes to 10 o'clock, unfortunately. Yes. Peter, we will give you the closing words after we get some closing thoughts from Dr. Thompson, who unfortunately had some technical issues. So, Dr. Thompson, you have 30 seconds for closing comments.
Something Peter said earlier on. For St. Vincent, we do believe that there is a space in relation to the export of St. Vincent and the Grenadines product, and that we have been able to create, I would think, a strategic compact between various investors and the local cultivators, such that the local cultivator is a true part of the industry and there isn't what would be seen as exploitation. But being able to export does require certain quality process. St. Vincent has wonderful soil. We have a soil called Molic Andersoil. We have abundance of water, and we have the traditional cultivators, that intellectual knowledge that's there. And along with all the other investments that we've seen come into the thing, which has been significant, I think that we should really be able to make a firm push that we would have a voice and a place in that industry of the future, and we're hoping that other Caribbean countries could come along and join with us in terms of labeling the Caribbean as a destination that probably is seen as somewhere where that can produce this all year round, and not some always under some greenhouse in the cold and with snow all around it, you know?
Dr. Rav Gonzalez will hire you in the cabinet once more. Peter, the closing thoughts are yours this evening.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm comfortable with Dr. Thompson's position that, you know, we are, as a Caribbean community, we're having a conversation about having one less social problem. I think that the ganja issue in Grenada represents a social problem. The fact that you started to have this conversation means that in a few years' time, you can have one less social problem to deal with, and you can focus your energies on other things. So I think it's a good opportunity for Grenada to grow in that regard. I'm happy that the surveys that my organization has done and have been able to help contribute to the conversation and help to help people understand what people feel about it on the ground. And I certainly wish you well along this ganja journey that Grenada has started.
Peter, let me thank all three gentlemen for the. Did I get my math right? Three gentlemen for your contributions to tonight's program. Unfortunately, the clock is against us. I have like 10 questions for each panelist that I was not able to ask because the discussions have been so stimulating. And I think we need to have a part 2 of this. And also, I'm here thinking that I need to get all three of you on GBN's To The Point program, which is done in the morning. So, Peter, it would be early. I know you wouldn't have to stay up at midnight to participate. But we'll see. We'll have a conversation when the program is complete or tomorrow as to how we can continue the discussion, because you have unearthed a lot of the issues which have been under the carpet for us. So let me thank you sincerely for having participated. For those of you who joined us late, our panelists this evening, Dr. Andre Godon, he's CEO of TSL Technical Services out of Jamaica, Dr. Jerrol Thompson, the CEO of St. Vincent and the Grenadines Medical Cannabis Authority, and Mr. Peter Wickham. He's the director of CADRES, and he conducted the 2018 survey for inclusion into CARICOM's marijuana report, and he did look at some of the figures coming out of Grenada as well. Very stimulating discussion. On behalf of the entire production team, Mike Alexis, Darius Locum, Kellon Batiste, Janelle McDonald, and the other producers in the News and Current Affairs Department, we want to say thank you so much to you, our beloved listeners and our viewers. Thanks for keeping your date with us on Monday nights right here on Beyond the Headlines. Peter and others, so long for now. We'll see you again sometime.
Okay.
That's it for Beyond the Headlines this evening. I'm Odette. Campbell is over and out.
Are you looking for quality herbs and herbal supplements? Or are you thinking about having a complete body cleanse to jumpstart your health? Then no need to look further. Visit Nirvana Natural Health Clinic, Detox Center, and Natural Health Store. We carry a wide range of herbal products for kidney and gallstone cleansing.